with Act 2, pages 1626 and following, where we just left off at the end of Act 1. Hamlet has his scene with the ghost. He promises to exact revenge, and he tells his friends, if I act crazy at some points from here on out, don't let anyone know that I'm acting crazy. That is, let them think I really am crazy. This is going to be very important in Act 2. Okay? And we saw, as we discussed themes, what was the number one theme, or the first theme that we talked about, that the play kind of shows us? Spying or observing, okay? Watching, etc. Look how Act 2 begins. We see Polonius. He's in his own home, or in a room in his house, okay? And he is sending one of his servants off to Paris. His servant's name is Reynaldo, and he's sending him there for what purpose? To spy on his son. Okay? Now, why is he sending him to spy on his son? What did he say to Laertes before Laertes left for Paris? He gave him that string of advice, that string of proverbs, so to speak. It's almost like he doesn't believe his son's going to follow his advice. But also, kind of in sending Reynaldo to spy on his son, he's kind of breaking the spirit of most of his own advice. Okay? He's not keeping things to himself. He's watching others, hear his son, etc. Okay? So, Reynaldo leaves, and Ophelia comes in, page 1628. And notice how Polonius addresses her when she comes in. I think Shakespeare loves to do this. And what I'm getting at is he loves to kind of give stage directions via dialogue, via what people say. Okay? Here, for example, is what I mean. How now, Ophelia? What's the matter? By saying that, he's kind of telling us how Ophelia should come in. She doesn't just open the door and just kind of waltz in. She rushes in and she looks crazy. She looks frantic. She looks surprised or scared. And so he says, what's the matter? Okay? Oh, my lord, I've been so frightened. He says, what happened? As I was sewing in my closet, that in her room, Hamlet comes in. And she gives us a description of Hamlet. Okay? Doublet all embraced. Doublet is what we would call a shirt. It's what actually covers what would be an undershirt. But it's all untied. It wouldn't have buttons. It would have like a leather lacing. And so it's all untied and open. What else? No hat upon his head. See, in the society in which Shakespeare is writing, that is late 16th century, very early 17th century, proper attire for a young man to be out and about would include a hat. Okay? So, no hat on his head, his stockings fouled, that is, his stockings, because you've probably seen, pictures of guys essentially wearing what we consider tights, but they're individual stockings. And they come all the way up to the hip and they're tied with a garter. His are loose and down around his ankle. Right? Ungartered and down jived to his ankle, pale as a shirt, his knees knocking together, and with a look so piteous and purport as if he had been loosed out of hell to speak of horrors. Okay? Now this comes hard after Act 2. What? Act 1, right? What was the last thing Hamlet kind of saw in Act 1? His dead father's ghost. Not quite loosed from hell, loosed from purgatory. So, that could be adequate, could be accurate. But the description she gives meets the medieval and Renaissance medical diagnosis. That is, they actually ascribed this behavior to this problem, lovesickness. Okay? So when Hamlet comes in, not properly dressed, not obeying kind of the social customs and mores, somebody would look at him and go, I get it. He's lovesick, which is exactly what Polonius assumes. Notice, mad for thy love, mad there meaning crazy, not angry, out of his mind. I don't know, but I fear it. What said he? So she says, he took me by the wrist, and she's kind of implying he held me hard, okay? And he extended away, and then he comes back and looks at her closely in the face. And thrice his head thus waving up and down, he raised a sigh so piteous, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So, Polonius says, come on, let's go to the king. This is the very ecstasy of love, whose violent property foredoes itself and leads the will to desperate undertakings, as oft as any passion. And then he says, I am sorry. What, have you given him any hard words of late? Why does he say, I am sorry? Okay, notice, first of all, what he says before that. This is the very ecstasy of love. What is he saying about Hamlet now that he didn't say when he gave Ophelia advice in Act 1? In Act 1, he asks, what were you and Laertes talking about? She tells him, and he says, don't believe. Don't believe a word of what Hamlet tells you. He doesn't really love you. He just wants sex. Now he says, this is love. This is real, true love. The ecstasy, the word ecstasy, literal meaning is an out-of-body experience. He's saying Hamlet has gone kind of out of his body. He's out of his mind in love for you. That's why he says, I am sorry. I should have realized. I should have understood. So that's then why he asks, have you given him any hard words of late? Have you sworn at him? Have you yelled at him? Have you said something mean to him? She says, no. I did as you did command. That is, I'm a good daughter. I followed your advice. I repelled his letters and denied his access to me. That is, he tried to give me more letters of love, more poems and such, and I said, no. I put return to sender, address unknown, gave him back. And when he came knocking on my door, I wouldn't let him in. Polonius, this hath made him mad. It's because you've done that, that's why he's crazy. I am sorry that with better heed and judgment I have not quoted him. Quoted. He means what I said to you before, when I thought I was telling you what he really wanted. If I had thought about it more, if I'd looked into it more, then I would have said, no, it's not sex. He really does love you. So he says, we've got to go talk to the king. Okay? So, scene 2. The king comes in with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Okay? And we find out who they are. They're friends of Hamlet. They've known Hamlet since infancy. They've grown up with him. They've been close friends of him. And he has them there for one purpose. What is it? Spy on Hamlet. Go figure out what's wrong with Hamlet. Okay? And they say, we will. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern leave. Polonius comes in, says, I have something to talk to you about. Voltimand and the ambassadors come in. The king deals with them first, sends them away. And Polonius then addresses the king. Bottom of 1631, line 86. Okay? My liege and madam, to expostulate my majesty should be what duty is, why day is day, night, and time is time, or nothing but to waste night, day, and time. Therefore, since brevity is the soul of wit. Okay, what's the purpose of everything from 86 to 90? 86, 87, 88, 89. Because 90 says, since brevity is the soul of wit. Brevity, being brief. Well, 86 through 89 show lack of brevity. It's kind of Shakespeare's way of showing us Polonius isn't as witty, isn't as intellectual as he thinks he is. Okay? So he says, since brevity is the soul of wit, and tediousness the limbs and outward flourishes, well, that's what he's doing. He's being tedious here. I will be brief. Your noble son is mad. Now, notice when he actually gets to it, the statement is very short and declarative. Hamlet's mad. Mad call I it, and then he goes on about madness. And that's why the queen says, more matter with less art. Matter, more substance. Get to the point with less art, less rhetoric, less rhetorical flourishes. He says, I use no art at all. That he is mad, 'tis true. That is, it is true, he's crazy. Because it's true, he's also worthy of pity. So, he goes on. Mad let us grant him. That is, let's take for the sake of argument, he's mad, he's crazy. Now, it remains, we need to figure out why he's crazy. What sent him crazy? Okay? So he says, perpend, line 105. Consider, I have a daughter, while she is mine, who in her duty and obedience mark hath given me this. And he pulls out a letter, and he starts to read it. And he shows it to them. And Gertrude says, did this come from Hamlet to her? He says, hold on, let me finish reading it. And so he finishes reading the poetry. Okay. And it says, yes, Hamlet gave this to my daughter. King, how hath she received his love? Okay. King wants to know, did Ophelia reciprocate? Did she speak her love to Hamlet? Polonius, what do you think of me? Who do you think I am? Why does he ask that? What do you mean, what do you think of me? Well, when the king says, when Claudius says, how has she received his love? What he's really saying is, has Ophelia said yes to this? That is, to Hamlet's love. And when Polonius says, what do you think of me? He's not explicitly stating, but he's implying, I know my place. I know my daughter's place. My daughter's place is not beside Hamlet. Why? He's a prince. I'm merely a counselor. She's not a princess. Okay? She's out of her league with Hamlet, which is why he says, when the king says, as a man faithful and honorable, I would fain prove so. But what might you think when I'd seen this hot love on the wing, as I perceived it? I must tell you what. Before my daughter told me, what might you or my dear majesty, your queen here, think if I had played the desk or table book or given my heart a winking? That is, what would you think if I encouraged her? Go, Ophelia, go, marry Hamlet. He says, no, I went to work and I told her, Lord Hamlet is a prince out of thy star. This must not be. Out of thy star, he's referring to either the Ptolemaic, comes from a Greek astronomer named Ptolemy, or the other way of calling it is the geocentric conception of the universe, which says Earth is at the center of the universe, and everything else revolves around us. And in this Ptolemaic notion, you have 9 what are called concentric spheres, larger and larger and larger. And each of these has some kind of ruling planet or star or being and intelligence. In the Christian version of this, each one of these has an angelic order that is in charge of it, or a being that's in charge of it. Okay? This, by the way, it's the whole basis for astrology. Because where this star or planet is at in the sky on the moment of your birth determines what kind of person you will be. If you are under an ascending Mars, you're going to be martial and warlike. If you're under an ascending Venus, you're going to be a lover, etc. Okay? So he says, I told her, Hamlet is a star out of your reach. He's saying, like, Ophelia, honey, here's where you can find your lovers. Hamlet's like out here. He's so far out of you. You can't even get close to him. Right? So he says, and I prescripts gave her. Prescripts. I told her, no. Okay? Admit no messengers, receive no tokens, which is what she did. And he repelled a short tale to make, fell into a sadness, then into a fast, then into a watch, etc., etc. That is, when she told Hamlet, I don't want any more of your letters, we can't go for walks together, I can't see you alone, etc., etc., Hamlet went crazy. And the king turns to Gertrude. You think that's the case? Why is he turning to Gertrude? Well, she's his mother. Who's going to know him better than she would? Could be. Polonius. Have there ever been such a time that I positively said 'tis so, and it's proved otherwise? That is, modern English. Have I ever been wrong in my advice to you? Not that I know. Take this from this. He points to his head. Take this, my head, from this, my body, if I prove wrong. It's foreshadowing, by the way. It's also an example of dramatic irony. He doesn't realize the truth of what he's saying, because what's going to happen in the next act. He's not literally going to have his head removed from his body, but he is going to die, because he's wrong. Okay? So, King, how can we try it further? And he uses that word, try, which is related to alchemy. Here's a reason why I brought alchemy up. That word, and that word, they all mean the same thing. We're going to examine it, and we're going to put it kind of to the scientific test. Okay? When you take a test, it's essentially you're being tried in a test tube to see what you know, so to speak. All right? So, Polonius, he sometimes goes walking in this gallery for hours at a time. At such a time, line 161, I'll loose my daughter to him. How do we usually use that word loose? We say something is loose. The horses have gotten loose. The cattle have gotten loose. The dogs are loose. Or a knot is loose. Or something that should be tied is loose. He says, I'll loose my daughter to him. That's a very specific kind of phrase. It's an idiosyncratic phrase. Usually it's I'll loose something on something. Strangers in the yard, I'll loose my dogs on them. Okay? In another one of Shakespeare's plays, we hear a character say, let loose the dogs of war. So he's using a verb that's often applied to dogs to his daughter. So, I'll loose my daughter to him. In doing so, what does Ophelia become? I'm not saying she becomes a dog. What does she become for Polonius and to Hamlet? She's a spy. She's now in the process. She's now part of the opposition. Okay? And he says, be you and I behind an arras then. So here's the globe. Okay? Tiring house is back here. And you've got two doorways. Those doorways are often covered by a curtain. And when the doorway is open, the curtain's drawn aside. When the doorway is closed, the curtain is closed. Or there might be an actual door, okay, for both of those. When he says, we will be behind an arras, what he means is, we'll be so where we cannot be seen by the people out there, but they'll still be on the stage, just hidden, covered, okay? And we'll mark the encounter. We'll watch what happens. But then they see Hamlet coming. And Polonius says, go, I'll board him presently. Okay, the term board, line 169, your gloss just tells you it means accost. What does accost mean? Because that's a word we don't use in modern English, contemporary English. We don't really use that very much. It's a naval warfare term. Okay? You're out on a boat. Your enemy's on a boat. And what you do is you run up alongside and you have a long board with spikes sticking out the end. And your men throw that board so that the other end sticks in the other boat. And you go across. It's a means of taking control. Okay? That's what he means. I'm going to take control of this situation. Okay? So, how does my good Lord Hamlet? Well, God of mercy, do you know me, my Lord? Why does he ask, do you know me? He wants to find out how far gone Hamlet is. How crazy is he? Excellent, Will. You are a fishmonger. Now, your gloss is idiotic. I mean, it's correct. A bawd, a procurer. How many of you knows what a bawd, B-A-W-D, or a procurer means? Modern English, if it's male, you're a pimp. If it's female, you're a madam. That is, you run hookers. You run whores. Because if you go to a pimp, what are you going for? You're not going for change. You're not going for a gallon of milk down at the store. You're going to buy flesh. So he says, yeah, I know you. You're a pimp. No, I'm not. Okay? Which is kind of interesting. Never thought about it this way before. Because you can also mean you're a fishmonger, you're a pimp, in that you also sell yourself for information, right? I mean, he's an advisor. He's selling himself, okay? So, Hamlet, then I would you were so honest a man. Honest, my lord? Aye, sir, to be honest as this word goes, is to be one man picked out of 10,000. Remember, Midsummer Night's Dream, Puck said, an honest, a faithful man is 1 in a million. Okay? Now it's 1 in 10,000. How does Hamlet mean he's honest as a fishmonger? Well, think of the image I used before. You go to a pimp, you go to a madam, what are you going for? You know exactly what you're going for. Okay? It's an honest trade. Money, sex, period. I mean, there's nothing else involved. Okay? Polonius, that's true. That is 1 in 10,000 is true. Yeah, that's true. For if the sun breed maggots and a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion, your gloss, a good piece of flesh for kissing. Does that help? Does that help explain the line? Have you a daughter? How does the sun breed maggots and a dead dog? Breed there means engender. Well, they didn't understand about microscopic critters, for lack of a better word. They didn't understand that there is stuff in the air that if it lands on the right source material, on the right petri dish, it's going to come alive. The popular mythology, the popular conception was, when you have a dead animal on the side of the road and it bursts open, and then you start to get maggots, the maggots are because the sun is impregnating that. All right? So, dead dog, carrion, sun, maggots. Have you a daughter? I have, my lord. Polonius is like, where is he going with this? Let her not walk in the sun. Why? Well, if the sun can breed maggots in a dead dog, what's it going to breed in your daughter? Let her not walk in the sun. Conception is a blessing. That is human conception. The Old Testament says, children are a gift, a blessing of the Lord. But as your daughter may conceive from walking in the sun, friend, look to it. Polonius, his response is an aside. It's just to the audience. Hamlet doesn't hear it. How's he still harping on my daughter? Yeah, but he didn't know who I was at first. That is, how can he be harping on my daughter when he didn't know who I am? He thought I was a fishmonger. He's far gone. Far gone. And then we get a little bit of background about Polonius. And truly in my youth I suffered much extremity for love, very near this. I understand, Hamlet. I had it bad too. So, he asked Hamlet, because Hamlet's had this book in his hand, and he came in reading it. What do you read, my lord? Words, words, words. What is the matter? That is, what is the meaning? What is the subject matter of the material you are reading, my lord? Hamlet takes what is the matter to mean, well, what's the matter between these two people? Like, what's the conflict? That's why he says, between who? I mean the matter that you read, my lord. And so Hamlet tells him, it's satirical stuff. It says things about old men and such. And Polonius, again, he hears that, and he speaks to the audience. Though this be madness, yet there is method in it. That is, everything he's just said is crazy. And yet, it's not totally crazy. There is a order to it. There is a methodology to it. Okay? So he says, will you walk out of the air, my lord? Because they're indoors, right? So he says, let's go outside on the balcony. Let's get some fresh air. Hamlet takes, will you walk out of the air, and turns another meaning out of it. Into my grave. Right? Because here we are, we're all walking, we're sitting, and we're in the air. Hamlet says, where's the only other place you can walk and not be in the air? In the ground. That's out of the air. And then again, a third aside. How pregnant sometimes his replies are. Notice, pregnant, conception, maggot breeding. Okay? So you've got that image of offspring. Only here, the offspring are where? They're Hamlet's thoughts. And he says, man, his replies are just blossoming with meaning. It's a happiness that often madness hits on, which reason and sanity could not so prosperously be delivered of. I will leave him and contrive the means of meeting between him and my daughter. So he says, my honorable lord, I must humbly take my leave of you. That is just polite speech in Shakespeare's day. You're visiting, and then you say, I must now take my leave of you. That's kind of a request. It's almost like, if you were raised in a household that emphasized manners. Before you get up and leave the dinner table, you say, "May I be excused?" That's essentially what he's saying. And Hamlet says, "You cannot, sir, take from me anything that I will more willingly part withal." You can't take your leave from me. Why? Because I want you to leave. That's Hamlet just saying, "Get the hell out of my face." But then he undercuts that. "But what can you take from me?" "Except my life, except my life, except my life." Now, why does he say that? Or more specifically, why does he say it to Polonius? Do you think Hamlet realizes this? That he's being watched? That everybody wants to know what he's doing? See, I think he does, and I think he does from fairly early on in the play. I mean, after all, we have Polonius talking to the king and queen, and they see Hamlet coming. What's the reverse of that? Does Hamlet see the three of them? I mean, if he's entering, does he, as he enter with the book, does he just kind of glance up and see the three? Okay. So, Polonius leaves, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in. And you can call them Rosencrantz and Guildenstern or Guildenstern and Rosencrantz. It doesn't matter. They're totally interchangeable. Okay? And Hamlet addresses them. "How are you doing?" Rosencrantz says, line 219, top of 1635, "As the indifferent children of the earth." That is, we're okay. Life's okay with us. Guildenstern, "Happy in that we are not over happy. On fortune's cap, we are not the very butt." Now, fortune is normally portrayed as a wheel that is constantly turning. What Shakespeare is doing here with the image, however, is he's portraying fortune as the goddess Fortune, who is the one who turns the wheel. Okay? And so he's saying, we're not the button on her cap. So here's her hat. We're not right here. Which, within the metaphor of the wheel, means we're not at the top of Fortune's wheel. We're not just doing great, where everything is working out fine. Okay? Hamlet, nor the soles of her shoes. So you're not down here either? That is, life's not a pit. Life doesn't totally suck and then you die. Rosencrantz, neither, my lord. Hamlet, oh, then you live about her waist. In the middle of fortune. In the middle of her favors. Guildenstern, faith, her privates we. And yeah, we live around fortune's privates. One of the things in Shakespeare about fortune is he often describes fortune as a slut. Why? Well, fortune sleeps with everybody. Because everybody has either good fortune or bad fortune. We all get it. Okay? We all get fortune's privates, is what they're saying. But they're saying, yeah, we sleep with fortune. Okay? Shakespeare uses a lot of sexual innuendo and imagery throughout this play. Okay? So, Hamlet, in the secret parts of fortune, almost true, she is a strumpet. That is a prostitute. Okay? What's the news? What's up? What does he really mean? Why are you here? Because where should they be? These guys should be at the university too. What are you doing here? No, Lou, no news. But the world's grown honest. Then is doomsday near. Then it must be the end of the world. No, come on. Why are you here? What have you deserved at the hands of fortune that she sends you to prison hither. Why has fortune sent you to this prison? Geocentric prison, my lord. Denmark's a prison. Then is the world one. Okay? So Hamlet says Denmark's a prison. And Rosencrantz says, well, if Denmark's a prison, then the whole world must be a prison. Hamlet, a goodly one. You're right, it is a prison. And I never thought of bringing this up, and I probably shouldn't, but we're called the Manichees. They get their name from a guy named Mani. Held, they were an early religious system, kind of contemporary with early Christianity, and then they kind of developed a heresy within Christianity that said essentially anything and everything physical is bad. It's bad. Only the spiritual is what is good. So the idea is try to attain the spiritual, overcome the physical. Okay? Gnosticism was kind of similar. It implied more, not just spiritual, but intellectual, secret knowledge, and this kind of stuff. So, Rosencrantz, when Hamlet says Denmark's a prison, Rosencrantz says, then is the world one. He's kind of implying, I get what you mean. Yeah, everything physical, it's all bad. Hamlet, the world, it's a goodly one. That is, Hamlet saying, no, the world isn't bad. All right? In which there are many confines, wards, and dungeons. Denmark's one of the worst. Okay? We think not so, my lord. That is, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, we don't think Denmark's a prison. Hamlet, then it's not to you. Now, that might seem like a little flippant statement, but it's really actually quite profound. Because what does Hamlet say? For there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. How does thinking make something good or bad? How many of you have ever had to do something in your life where you really dreaded doing it? Because you didn't know what it was. I mean, you knew it was coming, you knew you had to do it, but you dreaded doing it. And you discovered, when you started it, this isn't so bad. And discovering it isn't so bad took away a lot of the hardness of doing it. That is, it became something enjoyable. The thinking made it different. In other words, it's one's attitude towards something. It's one's perspective towards something that makes it hard or not hard, or good or bad. St. Paul says in several of his letters, for example, about eating. If you think eating something is a sin, then for you, eating that thing is sinful. Like, if you think eating meat is sinful, then you shouldn't eat meat. If you think eating vegetables is sinful, then you shouldn't eat vegetables. Okay? So, Hamlet. Why then 'tis none to you, for there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me, it's a prison. I think Denmark's a prison, so it's a prison for me. Why then your ambition makes it one. 'Tis too narrow for your mind. Okay? Notice, who said that? Rosencrantz. When Rosencrantz says that, what's he trying to do to Hamlet? And I'm asking for language that they're totally unaware of. I'm asking for language that comes from the 20th century. He hears Hamlet, and what does he do? He tries to psychoanalyze him. Oh, I get it. I know what your problem is, Hamlet. Your ambition makes Denmark too small for you. What ambition? What's he implying? What ambition does Hamlet have? What's Hamlet want to be, possibly, according to Rosencrantz's word? King. After all, what should Hamlet be? King. Claudius usurped his position, took his place as king. And Freud loved this play. Freud would say, and in Hamlet's mind, Claudius also took Hamlet's position in his mother's bed. Because Freud says all men want to kill their fathers and sleep with their mothers. It says more about Freud than I think it does about most men. Okay? So, your ambition makes it one. Denmark is too narrow for your mind. Hamlet takes that and says, God, I could be bounded in a nutshell. Pick a nut. Can't be like a peanut. Well, I guess it can. But like a walnut. All right? I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space. So take me, shrink me down, put me in a nut. And he says, I would count myself a king of infinite space. And yet it's bounded by a nutshell, right? So if it's bounded by a nutshell, then what kind of space is it? It's finite. Because the shell is the thing that defines it, puts a limit on it. But Hamlet doesn't finish there. Were it not that I have bad dreams. I could be a king of infinite space, but I have bad dreams. What's he saying about the dreams? Where do the dreams come from? Outside the shell. See, that's Hamlet's point. If it weren't for bad dreams, I wouldn't have any problems at all. You could wrap me up. You could send me to prison. You could put me in a cell. And I could be a king of infinite space. Except for the bad dreams. And he's kind of suggesting, where do the bad dreams come from? Okay? Guildenstern. Following on what Rosencrantz said about ambition, which dreams indeed are ambition. For the very substance of the ambitious is merely the shadow of a dream. Okay? The substance of the ambitious is merely the shadow of a dream. He says, dreams indeed are ambition. For the very substance of the ambitions is merely the shadow of a dream. Remember the other day when we were talking about the difference between substance and accidents. Okay? This is the appearance something takes. This is its very essence, what it really is. Okay? Dreams indeed are ambition. The very substance of the ambitious is merely the shadow of a dream. So, the substance of the ambitious is what? That is the thing that the ambitious person wants. He says, that is a shadow. And it's a shadow of what? The dream. He's saying the dream is ultimately the reality. Okay? And it causes what? It causes a shadow. Okay? Hamlet, a dream itself is but a shadow. Now we need to pause for a minute. Because what Shakespeare is getting at here, or what he's obliquely discussing, or raising to some extent, is an idea of the 5th century, I think, Greek philosopher Plato. You had Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Socrates taught Plato, Plato taught Aristotle, Aristotle taught Alexander the Great, okay? If you want to throw him in there. Three great early Greek philosophers. Okay. Plato taught that the only thing that's important, the only real thing, is what's called the world of ideals or forms, right, which exists out there somewhere. And the world that we inhabit is the world of shadows, or what's called the shadowlands. This world is the shadowland. What did he mean by that? He used what's called the Allegory of the Cave to show this idea. And he told his readers, he puts this in the mouth of Socrates, by the way. He has Socrates tell this story. Socrates never wrote anything himself. Everything we know by Socrates was left behind by Plato. So it's kind of hard to determine what's really Socrates' ideas and what are really Plato's ideas. But classical scholars tell us we can kind of differentiate the two. So, what Plato suggests is, imagine for a moment people in a cave, okay? So I've got an individual sitting here. And the individual sits, so imagine this room is a cave, and this is the back wall. Imagine this is the back wall of the cave. So the person is sitting, and all the person can see, because they are chained, they are bound, all they can see is what's ahead of them. Okay? So now, imagine back here, there's a high wall behind where the person is sitting. So the person's sitting like right up next to it. And there's a high wall, and back here are people walking about and going about their daily business. Okay? And behind them is a huge fire. So the fire creates light. All right? The people are walking in front of the light, and that produces what on the wall? Shadow images. Are the shadow images clear? No, they're shadows. And they're kind of flickering because of the light. But these people are born, raised, and die all the time in these seats. Okay? It's just a story. It's just an image to convey an idea. So he says, what is going to be, what do they think is reality? It's this. It's what they see all their lives. And then Plato says, now, take one of those individuals, untie him or her, take them outside the cave to the quote-unquote real world. Okay? Notice, first of all, the closer and closer they get to here, what happens to their eyes? It gets brighter and brighter and brighter, because the only light they've ever seen is this pale imitation of real light. And they come out here, and it's dazzling bright. Like if you saw the total eclipse of the sun a couple years ago. If you watched it when it went dark, and you could look right, I know scientists say, look at this. You could look right at it for a couple of minutes. But as the moon started to move, what happened? The sun in all its glory comes out. So they come out, and after they get their eyes acclimated, they see the sun. They see the real light. That is, this is the ideal. This is the form. This is the source of all real light. This down here, pale copy. Okay? Plato said, that's what our lives are. We, down here, are like this chained person. We are seeing pale copies of the real light, real life. And he said, and our whole goal should be to find this, to search for this, which is what he called the summum bonum, the highest good. Both he and Socrates taught the whole purpose of human life is to seek the highest good, which Socrates ultimately said was God. That's why he was executed. Because he went against the Senate's pantheistic, Zeus and Hera and all of them. He said, oh, that's all nonsense. Those are just superheroes. Okay? So, notice what Shakespeare's doing. Guildenstern, which dreams indeed are ambition for the very substance of the ambitious, that is, the reality, it's out here. Hamlet then replies, a dream itself is but a shadow. That's why he says, I could be a king of infinite space, bound in a nutshell, were it not for bad dreams. The dream itself is but a shadow. That implies what? Here's the light. Here's the dream down here. What's between the light and the dream? The reality. The thing that's causing the dream. See? He can't be a king of infinite space. Why? There's something outside the shell. There's something causing the dreams. He doesn't know what it is. Okay? There's some ultimate reality. Rosencrantz. Truly, yeah, you're right, Hamlet. A dream is but a shadow. Rosencrantz takes that to mean what? It's just ephemeral. It doesn't last. Hamlet's being philosophical. Rosencrantz is being literal. Okay? So, I hold ambition of so airy and light a quality, two of the exact same words that Theseus used when he was talking about fantasy and imagination and what they can do, that it is but a shadow's shadow. That is, say it's not the dream, it's ambition. And he says, because the light is shining, it's the shadow's shadow. See, what Rosencrantz says is ambition. Ambition's going to get you nowhere, man. If you're ambitious, you're gonna lose. It's better to just kind of cruise in life. Just put it on autopilot. Don't seek greatness, in other words. Hamlet. If you are right, because I think that needs to preface Hamlet's next statement. If you are right, then are our beggars' bodies, that is this, substance. Beggars are the real substance, okay? And our monarchs and outstretched heroes, the beggars' shadows. The beggars are the real things. The monarchs, the kings, and heroes, they're the shadows. They're imperfect images. Shall we to the court? Why does he ask them, should we go to the court? Well, who's he just mentioned? Monarchs and heroes. Should we go see the copies of beggars? Hamlet brings in beggars here. Why? Because he's going to bring in beggars again in Act 5. And he's going to say, kings are nothing more than beggars. He doesn't mean simply poor people. All right? So, they go on. Hamlet asks them again, so why are you guys here? They say, oh, no, we came to see you. Hamlet, come on. You were sent for. And Rosencrantz looks to Guildenstern. What should he say? Come on, Hamlet says, tell me we were sent for. That is, yeah. Your stepfather and your mother, they sent for us. They wanted us to. And Hamlet says, I know. I'll tell you why. And he gets a fairly long speech, middle of page 1636. And he says, I have of late, but wherefore I know not, line 278 or so, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises. That is, I don't do what I normally would do. And indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory, that is, like a dungeon, like a prison. This most excellent canopy, the air, Look you, this brave o'erhanging firmament, this majestical roof, fretted with golden fire, and maybe it's sunset, and you just have a gorgeous red and gold, clouds and stuff. It appeareth nothing to me but a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. I look around at the world and I see what? Darkness and death. Hamlet has said, what a piece of work is man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel. Okay? What's he getting at in this little speech about man? I mean, his next line or so. How like a god. Humanity is like a god. And when he says is a man, he doesn't mean a male human. He means a person. Doesn't matter the gender. The beauty of the world, the paragon, that is the very highest of animals. And yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? And yet to me, what is humanity but a quintessence? That is the very substance of dust. For dust thou art, and from dust thou came. God says. Why? Because he created Adam out of the dust of the ground. Hamlet says, look at us. Look at it. We have Einsteins among us. And yet, dust. We have Rembrandts. We have Michelangelos. We have Beethovens and Mozarts. People who produce beautiful music and beautiful art. We have, amazing athletes. And yet, dust. Man delights not me. And then we get a stage direction in the dialogue. No, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. So when he says, man delights not me, they smile because they're like, well, of course, you're not gay. And he goes, no, not women either. I didn't think that. You did. Okay? He said, you did. Because when you smiled when I said, man delights not me. And they said, oh, well, then you won't take pleasure when the actors come in. And they tell Hamlet about the players that are coming. Okay? So, the players come in, and Hamlet has the first player recite some lines of a play that Hamlet's familiar with. And the play is from a play about the Trojan War, where Hecuba, the queen of Troy, is lamenting the death of a son. Okay? And the guy just boo-hoos and gets tears down his face and everything. Pretty long passage. It's also, by the way, the scene where Hamlet gives us, Hamlet/Shakespeare gives us an indication of how Shakespeare didn't want his lines butchered. About, too much hand gesturing and not speaking the lines properly, etc. Okay? So we get to the end of that scene and the end of that act. Hamlet tells the first actor, if I could give you, have you put on a play, and if I could give you some 10, 15 lines, you could memorize those? He said, yeah, no problem. Okay, cool. So they all leave, and Hamlet gets a long soliloquy. And he says, line 499, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Why does he call himself a slave? If you're a slave, what does it mean you lack? Freedom. Where does he lack freedom? Is it not monstrous that this player, that is this actor, in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so into his own conceit that from her working all his visage wan, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, that is, isn't it horrible that this guy, in a fiction, a mere story, could make himself so seem saddened. Why is Hamlet a slave? Because he can't reveal himself. He is in shackles to keep what's inside of him secret and hidden. Why? Because if they all knew, he would be sent off to England much, much sooner than he is sent off to England. He's going to get sent off to England in Act 4, I think it is, for one purpose, to be killed. Okay? So, he goes on and says, keeps talking about the actor, line 516, yet I, so the yet, in contrast to this guy, I, a dull and muddy-mettled rascal, peak like John of Dreams, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing. I peek, that is, he says, I kind of give a little teeny indication of what's going on inside, like he did just a few moments ago with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, like he did a few moments before that with Polonius. He says, and I can say nothing. No, not for a king, his dead father, upon whose property most of your life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? Do I not do anything because I'm a coward? Who calls me villain? Who breaks my pate, smacks me across the head? Who plucks my beard? A very, what's the word I want? It's like using the N-word to someone's black. To pull somebody's beard. It's about the worst offense you could do. Okay? Don't ask me why. It came out in the Middle Ages for some reason. So he says, it cannot be, but I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. So, he goes on, line 540 and following. It said that the guilty creatures, I almost said critters, sitting at a play have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they proclaim their malefactions. So, I'll put on a play, get down to the very end. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. He's going to have a play put on that shows what? A brother pouring poison in his brother, the king's ear, while he sleeps in a garden. In other words, he's going to reenact the death of his father in front of the king. So we get Act 3. Okay? King, Queen, Polonius, Ophelia, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, we don't know what's wrong with him. He says he knows something's wrong with him, but he doesn't know what it is. Okay? So, Polonius keeps going on, it's my daughter, I'm telling you, man, he's in love, and he's gone crazy because of it. So, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern leave. Line 28 or so, the king tells Gertrude, leave, for we've sent for Hamlet thither. And he says, so that he, as toward by accident, may here affront Ophelia, her father and myself, lawful espials. That is, we will legally spy on him. Why is it legal? Because I'm the king and I say so. I make the law. Okay? We'll so bestow ourselves that seeing, unseen, we may have their encounter frankly judge, etc. Okay? So, notice what the queen then says to Ophelia. For your part, Ophelia, I do wish that your good beauties be the happy cause of Hamlet's wildness. I really hope that your beauty is the cause of his madness. So shall I hope your virtues will bring him to his wonted way again. I hope that your behaviors will bring him back, okay, to both your honors. And I think, based upon reading that in the light of a passage later in the play, that is the queen kind of signaling Ophelia. And if you are in your right mind, and Hamlet is in his right mind, you will honor each other. How? Through marriage. Because she says later on, I hope they'd be married. Okay? So, Queen leaves. Polonius gives a book to Ophelia. It says, read on this book. The show of such an exercise may color your loneliness. And it's a prayer book, right? And he says, we are oft to blame in this. 'Tis too much proved that with the devotions of visage and pious action, we do sugar o'er the devil himself. With devotions visage, with appearing to be saintly and godly and quote-unquote Christian, and with, Christianly, religious, spiritual action, we sugar over the devil. We cover up the devil inside. A lot of, little side political. A lot of people got upset. I think it was last week, 2 weeks, I can't remember. Everything blurs. There was the quote-unquote the National Prayer Breakfast. Nobody remembers what it is, unless you live in D.C. And all these people get together, Democrats, Republicans, and they all get together to talk about how much they love God and how much they love their neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. And Trump stood up, because the president is always invited to speak, after this guy, this evangelical guy, stood up and, talked about how we should love our neighbor, and he kind of looked at him and said, I'm having a hard time with that. I'm not good at that. People have been out for me for the last 3, and he just blasted without naming anybody by name. He blasted, for example, Nancy Pelosi, who was sitting 3 seats away from him. In other words, he did the exact opposite of what is said here. He didn't sugar over. Okay? We're used to presidents sugaring it over, pretending to be, right? And the king hears that and says, ouch, damn, that hurts. How smart alas that speech doth give my conscience. Okay? So, Polonius says, here comes Hamlet. And Polonius and the king were told, exeunt. They leave. But what have we been told they're going to do? They're going to stand behind the arras. If I were directing this, they would go and kind of pull the curtain over themselves. Why? Because they have to hear. We're clear. When they come back in, they've heard everything Hamlet said. So they cannot literally be back here. They cannot literally be off the stage. Okay? Hamlet comes in and he delivers what? He delivers what is often called the greatest soliloquy in the English language. But it's not a soliloquy. Hamlet comes in, and Ophelia is already on the stage. She's standing out there. He's not alone. So it can't be a soliloquy. And if it's not a soliloquy, if it can't be a soliloquy, because Hamlet's not alone on the stage, then what is that telling us about everything Hamlet says in this speech? It cannot be understood automatically as the real inner thoughts of his heart. It's not Hamlet thinking out loud, which is what a soliloquy is. And I think when Hamlet comes out and he sees Ophelia. He sees her out on that stage. He knows. Because remember, he's been sent for. He comes, he sees she's the only one, he instantaneously puts 2 and 2 together, and he comes out and says, to be or not to be? That is the question. What's the first thing out of his mouth? To live or to die? That's what the not to be is. That's the question. What's best? To go on or to kill myself? That's the only way you can get the to not be. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or there's fortune again, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. That's not opposing the sea of troubles out there. That's not, to use the example I used of Trump just a moment ago. That's not Trump going to the Democrats in Congress and killing all of them. That would be one way to oppose the sea of troubles. No. What's he talking about? Killing himself so that he no longer faces the troubles. Why do people commit suicide? Their troubles become too much. They see no light at the end of the tunnel. So, he says, to die? It's not a question. It's just a statement. To die. Well, what is dying? To sleep. Dying is like sleep. Sleep is like dying. We often say when somebody dies, they what? Or we'll put on a tombstone. R.I.P. Rest in peace. Requiescat in pacem. Rest implies, sleep. Sleep soundly. To die, to sleep. No more. No more. No more life. No more slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. No more opposing seas of troubles. And by sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. Whatever. Notice the first thing he says there. To end what? To end the heartache. Why does he say that? Polonius assumes what is Hamlet's problem? He's madly in love. And Polonius assumes he's mad. Why? What did his daughter do at his instruction? She denied Hamlet entrance into her room, not into her. He denied Hamlet's letters. She rebuffed him. Cause of heartache. So, and to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. Natural shocks, the buffeting, the problems of this world, hunger, hot, cold, pain, etc. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. Consummation, a finishing, a completion. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. And we're back with the speech with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. I could be a king of infinite space, bounded by a nutshell, were it not for I have bad dreams. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. There's the rub. What rub? There's the friction point. That's the problem. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come? Have you seen the film, What Dreams May Come? Robin Williams, Cuba Gooding Jr. It's fantastic. All right? What dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. That is, it's the thought of those dreams, this whole thing, that gives us pause. Why? Because the dreams are what? They're images of something else. The something else is, label this, death. What's beyond this? See, because none of us, I don't, maybe you do, none of us have one of these that we can go to look into death with. No, death is like this. It's solid. And we don't get to peer into it and go, looks safe to me. It must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. It's a respect for what's out there that turns long life into a calamity. I don't know about you. I don't want to live to be 90. I know people who do. I know people who want to live to be 100, 110, 120. Hell no. 80. 80's fine with me. Both my parents lived to be over 80, and that's when they start going downhill really bad. Alzheimer's. No, I don't want it. Okay? Hamlet. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time? The oppressor's wrong. Okay, so first, time. You guys are all pretty young. You're in the quote-unquote prime of life. I'm 2/3 done, I would assume, probably with my life. I've got 1/3 of it left to go. I can do some things now I couldn't do when I was 25 because I started weightlifting 5 years ago. But I can't do a lot of things now that I could do when I was 25 or when I was 35 or even 45 because my knees are shot. I can't run marathons anymore. That's part of time. Okay? So, first thing, the whips and scorns of time. But there's also the oppressor's wrong. The person who oppresses us. Maybe the thing that oppresses us. The proud man's contumely. That is arrogance. Looking down his or her nose. Okay? The pangs of despised love. And again, if I were directing when Hamlet says that, he just looks at Ophelia, probably at that far off corner. The laws delay. Because what's the phrase? Justice delayed is justice denied. The insolence of office, that is, of people who have high position. And the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. The patient merit, patient, the suffering, the enduring. A bare bodkin, it's a dagger. Who would fardels, that's burdens, bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death? He says this is why people go on living. Because there's something afterwards, which he calls the undiscovered country, Star Trek title of the film, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, does what? It puzzles the will. What's the will? The will is the faculty in us that desires to achieve something, to do something. It's the volition. He says, that undiscovered country puzzles. It confuses the will. It says, should I? Should I not? And makes us rather bear those ills we have, taxes, hunger, whatever, than fly to others that we know not of. You know, when Hamlet makes this speech, however, what benefit does he have within the context of the play that none of us have outside the context of the play? What has he seen that I'm assuming, that we have not seen? Who spoke to him in Act 2? His father, who came from where to speak to him? Purgatory. Okay? In other words, there was someone who returned from the undiscovered country and said, I burn during the day all the sins of my life that I didn't get redeemed of here. So Hamlet has had a window. He knows what's on the other side. Hell, heaven, purgatory, or hell, purgatory, heaven. Part of his question is, where am I going if I do this deed? Okay? It makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus, conscience. Why does he say conscience? What does our conscience do? Don't take that. It's not yours. Don't touch that. It's not yours. Don't look at that. It's not good for you. Don't taste that. Don't eat that. Don't. It's that faculty inside that says, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. It also says, do this, do this, do this, do this. It's that internal moral code. Conscience makes cowards of us all. Because conscience looks at it and weighs the pros and cons. And thus the native hue of resolution. What's the native hue of resolution? Have you ever had to push a car? Your car breaks down, you're not quite on the side of the road, you have to push it over, or push something, or pull something, or move something really heavy. What happens to your face? Especially if you're real pale white. It turns beet red because all that blood flowing because you're pushing so hard. Right? That's the native hue of resolution. So what does conscience do that? It sicklies it over with the pale cast of thought. Well, should I? I don't know. Maybe I should. Probably shouldn't. It thinks about it. In enterprises of great pitch and moment, great pitch, meaning great significance, great thing can be achieved. With this regard, with conscience and thought, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. Now, what's he saying there towards the end? Is he talking about suicide? No, he's not. He's talking about, oh, there's something I got to do, and it'll be huge and it'll be significant, but my conscience told me no. What is that? Kill Claudius. Why? Because everything in the Christian tradition says, no, you leave Claudius to God. I mean, Hamlet Sr. said, leave your mother to God. But I want you, son, to kill the dirty SOB who killed me. Well, what's that going to do to Hamlet? He's not going to heaven if he does that. At best, purgatory. And then he goes, oh, but look, Ophelia. Like he's suddenly seen her. And we will stop there and finish God knows what. Let's plan on a quiz over X 3 and 4 on Friday. Sorry. This is Thursday. If you came in late, I've got quizzes. Stand back. Michael, Bernard, Francisca, Mercedes. You know Mercedes? Kato. Okay. Jordan Sterling. Hold on a second. That's yours.
Michael.
Bernard?
Yeah.
Thanks. There you go. Anybody else come in late? Yep. Let me, there's one. And,
Thank you. It's going to be a quiz over X 3 and 4 on Thursday.
X, is it? Yeah, 3 and 4 is what I said, I think.
Thank you.
Yep.